The Naomi Osaka story is the perfect segue to this or next item, which debuts a new popular meme / talking point, and it's called, drumroll please, disaster patriarchy. A more than likely think tank devised term, like toxic masculinity, credited to Naomi Klein and now being pushed by the Vagina Monologues playwright, Feminist Eve Ensler. The Democracy Now! Program, infamous for using feminism to hijack, intersect, subvert, and coattail off of real Aboriginal American issues, interviewed Ensler right after a segment they did on Naomi Osaka, where the show presenter, Amy Goodman, interviewed a so-called black feminist and associate professor, Amira Rose Davis, from Penn State University. The Goodman-Davis interview managed to spin the Osaka story into a feminist one about women's control over their own bodies. Fact is, male athletes have far less control over their own bodies and go through more physical and mental abuse with no mental health support. And fact is, in so-called westernized societies, it's mainly Aboriginal males and non-wealthy males of all races who don't have a say with what happens with their bodies, whether it's male athletes being forced to tolerate female reporters in men's locker rooms, to the accepted societal practices of circumcision and conscription. While listening, take note of the obvious biased rhetoric used by Ensler and Democracy Now!'s Amy Goodman.
Disaster patriarchy, how the pandemic has unleashed a war on women. That's the headline of a new essay by V, the playwright and activist who is formerly known as Eve Ensler. She details how the pandemic has led to a surge in violence against women, as well as an economic and educational crisis, with tens of millions of women and girls out of work or school. In her essay, V writes, quote, "COVID's revealed the fact that we live with two incompatible ideas when it comes to women. The first is that women are essential to every aspect of life and our survival as a species. The second is that women can easily be violated, sacrificed, and erased." V joins us now from Kingston, New York, founder of V-Day and 1 Billion Rising. This year marks the 25th anniversary of her play, The Vagina Monologues. Her new piece on disaster patriarchy appears in The Guardian. V, welcome back to Democracy Now! Thank you so much for joining us. Talk about disaster patriarchy.
Well, I would say Naomi Klein was the first to identify disaster capitalism. When capitalists use a disaster to impose measures they couldn't possibly get away with in normal times, generating more profit for themselves. I think that disaster patriarchy is a parallel and complementary process where men exploit a crisis to reassert control and dominance and rapidly erase the hard-earned rights of women. And I think I spent months interviewing activists and grassroots leaders all around the world, from Kenya to France to India, to find out how this process was affecting them and how they were fighting back. And in very different contexts, certain key factors kept coming up. One was that women are losing their safety, their economic power, their autonomy, their education, and they are pushed onto the front lines where they are often used, unprotected, and sacrificed. If we look at intimate terrorism, otherwise known as domestic violence, has really turned home into a kind of torture chamber for millions of women around the world. I mean, we did a conference recently in France where domestic violence is out of control. We're seeing the same numbers in the U.S. It's hard really to determine, Amy, what is worse. The fact that men in 2021, thousands of men still feel willing and entitled to control, torture, and beat their wives and girlfriends and children, or that no government actually thought about this in thinking about their plans for lockdown. And I think we're also seeing just the outrage that is added to that many governments have reduced funding for shelters at the exact moment they were most needed. Very true throughout Europe and the U.S. In the UK, providers have said that the crisis has exacerbated a lack of access to services for migrant and Black, Asian, and minority ethnic women. And organizations working with those communities say that persistent inequality leads to additional difficulties in accessing services such as education, healthcare, and disaster relief remotely. Because much of the work that women do requires physical contact with the public, restaurants, stores, childcare, healthcare settings, those were the first to go. And then again, there's the lack of childcare options, which have left many women unable to return to their jobs. By the way, having children does not affect men at all in the same way. And the rate of unemployment, for example, for Black and Latino women in the US was high before the virus, but it's now even higher. Then there's the idea of working from home, where women's personal space has basically disappeared. Their workload has increased triple-fold. I don't think we can overstate how exhausting, how overwhelming the pandemic has been for women who really are not getting a break in any direction. And we know that when women are put under greater financial pressure, their rights erode. I was talking to women who were talking about the struggle to pay their rent, that they were being preyed upon by landlords, and there's a new process known as sextortion, where landlords are insisting that women have sex with them in order to pay their rent. And then, as you were saying earlier, and this is really disturbing to so many activists that I talked about, and I think it will have maybe the largest impact, is how many girls may not return to school. I talked to one of our activists in Kenya who's been fighting to stop female genital mutilation there for over, nearly 15, 20 years. And she said the pandemic has pushed girls back into their homes. They don't even know what's happening inside those homes because they don't have access to those girls. And we know when girls are cut, when they're female genitally mutilated, they no longer have access to education. And now there's a new development called masculine harassment, which is that men are insisting women who are wearing masks, who are waiting on them, pull down their masks so they can look at their faces to determine if they're pretty enough to get a tip. Okay, these are just horrible notions and things that are escalating throughout the pandemic. And I think in the end, as you said at the beginning, what COVID has revealed is that patriarchy is here. It hasn't gone away. It rises in disaster. And if we don't really address it now, if we don't say that we have to take it on full head as a system that is literally ruling and controlling our destinies throughout the planet, we're going to be spinning our wheels forever.
And so the resistance that people are organizing around the world, and you have always been a leader of that, talking about V-Day and the 25th anniversary of the vagina monologues, you're calling for a global initiative on the scale of the Marshall Plan to deconstruct, to exorcise patriarchy.
But I want to say I've been doing this work for so long, 25 years and longer, every day, day in and day out. And if we don't really get to the root of what patriarchy is, we will be here forever. So I really am envisioning this large global initiative to deconstruct and exercise patriarchy that would, first we'd have to acknowledge it, that it's the root of so many other forms of oppression, from imperialism to racism, from transphobia to the denigration of the earth. And then there would be an ongoing education, public forums, processes studying how patriarchy leads to those forms of oppression. We would use art to expunge trauma and grief and anger in the culture and help people heal and make people whole. And we would understand that a culture that has diabolical amnesia, which is certainly this country, and refuses to address its past, can only repeat its misfortunes and abuses. And I think we would have community and religious centers that dedicated to trauma, and we would study the arts of listening and empathy and reparations and apology. But we really have to say we need to focus on patriarchy as something real, as a system, and we need to dismantle it as a world.
Has anyone else noticed when reporting on alleged terrorist attacks or supposed mass shootings, media talking heads often emphasize or make an extra effort to mention the female gender of any victims? There is never any mention about male victims, whether men or boys. Such statements as end all violence against women implies that violence against males is unimportant or worse, acceptable. Fact is, violence against males is accepted. Males are considered expendable and disposable. Just ask any war vet. Does a person like Eve Ensler see the blatant wrong in such a statement as disaster patriarchy or end all violence against women? Why not ending violence, period? And furthermore, how selfish can a so-called adult be by pushing such an agenda? No doubt feminists, male or female, like Ensler, know the actual stats regarding domestic violence and war-related violence. The number one victims are children, primarily male children. Ending war against women or violence against women ignores violence perpetuated against children at the hands of so-called parents and or guardians. That statistic goes up when the victim is Aboriginal and male. An often avoided topic is the so-called racist origins of feminism and the continued covertly subversive racism that drives feminism today. Did you know that the suffrage movements of the 19th century were not inclusive of Aboriginal females? In fact, suffragettes were blatantly anti-Aboriginal male. Just ask early 20th century journalist, suffragette, and feminist Rebecca Latimer Felton, who started and led the charge for destruction of Wilmington, North Carolina, an economically thriving Aboriginal city like Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Felton's incendiary editorial was reprinted and ran in several other papers. In her editorial, Felton charged, "If it takes lynching a Negro man a day to protect white womanhood, I say lynch." Democratic politicians of the era took her statement and ran with it, making it a meme for many U.S. local elections, especially in the southern states, much like Reagan used the name Willie Horton or Biden used the term super predators. By the way, Latimer Felton was also the first female U.S. senator who served just one day as senator for the state of Georgia. You'll notice in the interview, Ensler mentions her advocacy against female genital mutilation. She makes no mention of advocating against male genital mutilation, aka circumcision, a savage ritual done to infant males with impunity and which is common within her culture. How many of you recall my insightful meme, 2021, when the para becomes the normal? It's all underway. First from the firmament or skies with UFOs or UAPs, whatever. It's all distraction with a nefarious underwritten purpose. Here's CBS affiliate News 8 Vegas with details of more so-called U.S. military UFO disclosure evidence.
Videos recorded by U.S. Navy personnel have added a new layer of evidence to the current national debate about UFOs. For the first time, radar images recorded inside a Navy ship have confirmed the presence of several unknown objects that swarmed around the ship for hours. I-Team reporter George Knapp here with a story that broke today on Mystery Wire.
Thanks, Brian. Over the past 3 years or so, the public has been able to see several astounding images of what certainly qualify as UFOs during encounters with the U.S. Navy. There's no question that the Pentagon has censored data to go along with the photos and videos, but none of that information has been leaked or otherwise released. That is, until today.
For 2 long hours on the night of July 15, 2019, the crew of the USS Omaha detected on multiple sensor systems unknown objects that surrounded the ship as it moved through ocean waters west of San Diego. One of the objects, a self-illuminated sphere at least 6 feet in diameter, flew alongside the Omaha for an extended period and was observed through a thermal sensor in the ship's combat center. Filmmaker Jeremy Corbell released the Navy video weeks ago and says similar events were reported by 8 other Navy ships in the same area over 3 days.
Mark bearing range.
There was numerous warships that are having similar it appears to be coordinated interaction, and this whole series was within this kind of, I'd say, circumference of 100 miles, and there was up to 50 to 100 contacts.
In the last 3 years, the Pentagon has reluctantly confirmed the legitimacy of UFO images captured by Navy ships and air crews, including these photos taken off the coast of Virginia and the better-known videos, the so-called Tic Tac incident and the gimbal. But other than the images themselves, there's been no release of censored data to buttress these cases. There is now.
Well, if you can write a general lat long where we're at. sir. And then the number of contacts you got, the course of the speed meters off.
Over a period of hours, crew members on the USS Omaha, which is located in the center of this radar screen, monitored the approach of the unknown objects, as many as 14 at one point, all around the ship. 2 different radar systems watched the objects and estimated their speed.
Track 781 just sped up to 46 knots, 50 knots, closing in. Oh, actually 38 knots.
That one's pretty much perfectly 000 relative, right?
Yeah.
Corbell obtained the images from sources he declines to identify. The Pentagon's UAP task force considers the Omaha spheres to be true unknowns. The ships that were under observation by the unknowns were unable to track where they came from or where they disappeared to. The Omaha sphere appears to have vanished into the ocean.
What was splashed?
At that point, it also vanished from all sensors. In one video snippet, 9 of the objects were seen around the Omaha, but 2 of them dropped off, somehow invisible to 2 radar systems.
And it supports the hypothesis that these are not just a balloon dropping into the water, or it's not something that is easily explained. These are true unidentifieds in mass number, and we'll talk more about that, but that's what we're showing people, where you have radar data that goes with FLIR data, what everybody has been belly aching for. So here you go.
If these are foreign-made high-tech drones, how do they fly with no wings, rotors, or detectable exhaust? Do they possess some sort of cloaking ability? The sensor data, combined with the video images, raises difficult questions.
These are unidentified. We don't know what they are. Everybody tries to corner me in saying they're aliens or something like this. I have no idea.
Maintain track as best you can.
George Knapp, 8 News Now.
The video of the radar screens consists of 4 clips that were spliced together to show that this went on over a period of time. Today, less than 4 hours after that video was made public by us, a Pentagon spokesperson confirmed it is legit, that it was recorded by Navy personnel and is in the hands of the UAP task force. That's the unit created to prepare a report for Congress that is due next month.
Yes, people, the para is becoming normal. First, the UFOs, as you saw. Next, the revelation with receipts, aka proof, of the inner space worlds or spiritual realms. And I wonder which ghost hunter sideshow will be the lucky and subsequently richer charlatan or charlatans to capture this actual otherworldly paranormal event on camera with their supernatural hunter tech gadgets. Rest assured, they'll be lucky to walk away from the encounter with their sanity intact. From the edge of reality, we go to paranormal merging with normalcy. This next item was rehashed from late 2020 and then was rebroadcast on Conveyor Belt Media as if it was some late-breaking news. In fact, the same opt-out tagline was used then and now, but with another tech, the smart meter. This time it's Amazon Technologies promising to invade your wireless connections. Residents all over the US were warned in 2020, and now the deadline is here. Allegedly, as with smart meters, if you're the owner of Amazon tech devices, you still have the chance to opt out of Amazon's all-inclusive, active-passive, always-available sidewalk network, which will use certain available Amazon devices to form an always-available wireless grid. Remember, utility companies told grid-tied customers they could opt out of smart meter installation as well? How'd that all work out for everyone? Anyway, here's CBS News with their take on it all.
Starting June 8th, all Amazon devices across the U.S. will automatically be linked to one another. It will happen when Amazon launches its new Sidewalk network. The network will include all Echo Home Assistant devices, Ring security cameras, along with certain Alexa-enabled lights and motion sensors. Amazon's goal is to create a low-bandwidth network, bridging all of its devices. Using Sidewalk, Amazon says users will be able to reboot malfunctioning equipment and even track missing objects that are lost outside of the home. However, in order for all of this to work, Amazon needs as many people to join the network as possible. This is causing some users to express concern over the network's security, as well as Amazon's decision to force users to opt out of Sidewalk rather than opt into it. Joining me now for more on this is CBSN technology reporter Dan Patterson. Hi, Dan. Great to see you. So first of all, I kind of need a better idea of how this is going to work. So I get that Amazon Sidewalk is going to link all of my Amazon products, but is it also going to link all of my Amazon products to everybody else's Amazon product?
Yeah, Tanya, we all kind of need that explainer. Amazon has been kind of vague with the details on how Sidewalk will function. Now, we should say this probably excludes your personal devices like the Kindle or Fire tablet. It is primarily designed around the Echo, Ring smart cameras, the Tile Tracker, which is a third-party company that integrates with the Sidewalk network using Amazon's AWS API that they built specifically for this, their IoT API. And what this is, Tanya, it's kind of like what you described. It is a network composed of these connected devices that connect to your neighbor's connected devices. Now, this is a low bandwidth network, so you're not going to be, say, downloading albums or streaming movies on this network. But what it allegedly will help you do is track things, find things. And what Amazon says is the more people who use this network, who keep this on by default, the stronger the network becomes and the easier it will be to find, say, lost keys or other devices that are enabled with Sidewalk.
All right. Well, I mean, it runs on a combination of Bluetooth and Wi-Fi connectivity, right, Dan? So how secure is the network? If somebody hacks you, are they hacking into all of your, connected devices now? And should users, feel safe about this?
Yeah, so once again, this is where Amazon's been a little vague, but what we do know is that it connects to your home Wi-Fi. It uses a very small portion, this is true, it uses a very small portion of your home Wi-Fi network as well as Bluetooth networks to kind of create this mesh, this connected network, one device connected to another device. And instead of high bandwidth, what it does is do long distance. So it will technically be able to connect to, say, your neighbor's Ring device, which then connects to your Alexa device and creates this kind of larger connected mesh network. But Tanya, I think that your concerns are pretty well-founded. Look, any network can be hacked. Amazon has said that these networks are protected with layers of encryption and that you won't be able to spy on your neighbors or see, your neighbor's keys, for example. But we really don't know. There is an API and some technical protocols that we can flip through. But until this is implemented and until we see how many people enable it or opt into it, or I guess instead don't opt out of it, it's really it's a beta network.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, because this sort of the fact that you have to you're automatically opting into it by doing nothing, which, by the way, won't fly in Europe, I don't think, under current internet company regulations. But we're in the U.S. now, so let's talk about us. How do we opt out before June 8th if that's what we want to do?
Yeah, that's right. You have until June 8th to opt out. Now, fortunately, and I tried this just before our segment, it is very easy to opt out. On your Android or your iPhone, simply open the Alexa app, look for settings, and then click more, look for your account settings. It's buried, yeah, I know. And then look for Amazon Sidewalk and turn that little slider to off. But you do have to do this before June 8th. Don't procrastinate on this. Amazon is giving you a very short window to turn off Sidewalk.
Because it really only works if the more people who are in it make it work better, correct?
Precisely. Yeah, that's exactly right. And look, Amazon's not the only company to do this. Apple recently released AirTags. These are small GPS trackers that work with or without a cell phone network. And of course, you have the iPhone, you have the iPad, you have your Mac computer. And between all those devices, Apple has something that's kind of similar. So really what we're seeing is, and forgive my jargon here, but we're seeing the emergence of kind of the next iteration of the internet, what has been hyped as IoT. That's the Internet of Things. Now, often this has been a business thing, a lot of necessary but kind of boring connected devices like sensors, sending data back and forth. But when we see consumer devices, stuff that's meant for you and me, connected to these networks that are kind of above or on top the regular internet, it will, in theory, enable a lot of really interesting innovation.
The hills may have eyes, but your sidewalk will have eyes and ears and electronic fingers. Watch where you walk, cause sidewalks do talk. Remember the God grid I mentioned nearly 9 years ago and then again earlier this year? Well, this Amazon Sidewalk network is a major part of it. Now you don't have to pray, just confess or ask Alexa for what you want, and it will be delivered unto thee via ground courier or drone. Just make sure your scannable debit card is unshielded for instant access. Sidewalk goes online June 7th, 2021. And with that, I now conclude this installment of the Balanced Reality Report. As always, special props to field and content producer Chris R., editing by A. Kanak, Balanced Reality Report theme songs by Ahjay, featured background music supplied by Lily J., Arulo, Michael Ramir, Francisco Alvear, and of course by the kind folks at mixkit.co. Until next time, this is presenter Pharoh. I'll see you soon, and don't you worry about a thing. Use of any third-party audio clip content is within compliance with the terms of fair use and the Copyright Act of 107. This report has been presented for informational and educational purposes only. If you wish to use copyrighted material from this report for purposes which go beyond fair use, you must obtain permission from the copyright owner.